Walden, Scarafile, and I live in Barnstable Village. This is a wonderful place to live. Anytime people talk about, oh, I think I'll move to Florida, or I think I'll get another house someplace else, I don't ever want to leave Barnstable Village. My husband and I took about 1.5 years to find a place to live, and Barnstable Village was it. Wonderful memories have to include everything from the Cape League, which I would obviously be saying, wonderful baseball all summer long, but sunsets from Sunset Hill in Hyannisport. So many activities going on in Barnstable year-round. When I hear some of the younger people say there isn't enough to do on Cape Cod, they need to look a little harder, because we have a lot to do and a lot of organizations to volunteer with. I am from New Jersey, and I'm from Bergen County, because in New Jersey everybody talks about counties. And that's in the northern part of the state, and if you were from New Jersey, you either went to the shore or you went to the Cape, and that's what they were called. So my family came to the Cape, so like many other people my age, I'm here because I came here as a child, loved it, sand in my shoes, all that stuff. Peter's from Newburgh, New York, but he was born in New Jersey. But he grew up in Newburgh, New York, but I have to confess this. He was a Yankee fan when we got married. And now he roots for both, but. Well, my favorite season has to be summer because of baseball. But beyond that, I love September and October. The water's still warm, the weather's warm, the roads aren't as crowded, and it's peaceful. The scenery is magnificent, and I love it. I covered our high school baseball team when I was in high school in Connecticut. I actually moved from New Jersey to Connecticut. And then when I went to the University of Connecticut, I had an opportunity to cover the baseball team for the school newspaper. That was a daily newspaper, which was pretty unusual back in the 60s and 70s. And then I was invited to the Cape League in 1970 to be an official scorekeeper. And the rest is history. So once I started as a scorekeeper in 1970, I had a gig where I could finish school, come back in the summer, have a job in Boston, come back in the summer, work in Boston, come back in the summer. And then finally, Peter and I got married here, and we stayed here in 1974. And the longer you live here, the more, or year-round people, the more involved you can get with organizations. So it just kind of grew. So I grew from a scorekeeper to director of public relations, secretary, deputy commissioner, vice president, and then one night I became president, 1991. The volunteers, everyone's a volunteer in the Cape League. I'm a volunteer, Steve Wilson, our treasurer, is a volunteer, all our officers, everyone in the Cape League is a volunteer. We don't have any employees. And we have at least 200 volunteers, whether it's on the league level or the team level. And we have host families without whom we could never run the Cape League. So our volunteers do everything from field maintenance, selling food in the concession stands, helping with housing, organizing travel arrangements, purchasing of uniforms. It's everything from A to Z. Everything's done by volunteers. And each organization, interestingly enough, each team is a separate 501c3 because they fundraise. The Cape League is separate 501c3, so we are 11 not-for-profit organizations all under the umbrella of the Cape League. Set up much like the design of Major League Baseball, except they make money. Right. We do not have a draft or a central recruiting office, which I think is a good thing. Each team does its own recruiting, and that's done really with the field manager, sometimes with assistance of the general manager. And recommendations come in from college coaches, from scouts, And you'll see through the years that certain coaches have long-standing relationships with certain colleges. So you might see a lot of Vanderbilt players on one team or a lot of California players on another team. And that's through those relationships.
Sure.
I do have 3 favorites, and I didn't even realize until I started to list them that they're actually all from Massachusetts. So the Chamber of Commerce or the State Department of Tourism would love my statement. But the 3 players I got to know the best and really are ever present in my mind, Jeff Reardon, Carlos Pena, and Ron Darling. And I'll tell you a funny Ron Darling story. Ron is probably one of the most talented players we've ever had here. He was a star quarterback at Yale. He was a brilliant student, and when it came to baseball, he could do almost everything. Actually, I don't even know if there's anything he couldn't do. He played outfield, first base, pitched, and he was an outstanding hitter. So we nicknamed him All World, and we just called him AW for short. So when he went into our Hall of Fame several years ago, his family was all here for the induction, and I got to tell that story in front of his family. I'm not even sure Ronnie ever knew that we called him All World. He was a very, very talented young man. And he still stays in touch with the Cape League. I maybe hear from him once every couple of months, and he's always gracious to say if there's anything I can do. And he's been up to some of our events as a speaker, so he's just a great guy. Jeff Reardon is a wonderful story. He was not drafted out of college or out of high school, from Dalton, Mass. Played 3 years in the Cape League, and anytime he was asked, he would say, if it weren't for the Cape League, I never, ever would have gotten into Major League Baseball. And of course, he had a stellar career as a reliever.
Did he play at UMass?
He did. Played for UMass, yep. See, when I went to UConn and UMass were part of the Yankee Conference, which doesn't even exist now, and we were arch rivals. Oh my goodness. And that was the connection I had that brought me to the Cape League, because Dick Bresciani, who was at UMass, is the one who invited me. Very professionally, because we were colleagues and we were very professional to each other, but I wouldn't say then that we were buddies. As it grew, we became the closest of friends, and when we lost Bresh in November, it was devastating to me. 47 years of friendship. Carlos is a wonderful story too. He's from Haverhill, Mass, and he played for Wareham, and and also Harwich. He played for Harwich his first year, then he moved on to Wareham, and he really, really got into the groove. And they used to call him the mayor in Wareham, because the mayor of the Pied Piper, because he had a following of kids. He was just so easy to engage and loved kids and would go to schools and read to them. And I mean, he's a great story. He's bounced around a bit in his major league career, and I wish it would have continued longer, but I think it's pretty much. Well, these 2 fields are absolutely stunning. And I will say that every field in the Cape League, and there are high school fields that are run by either the town or the Department of Park and Rec. So they're not private fields, they're not stadiums, which is a bit of a adjustment for the college players who came from a big program when they get here. But our fields, every field is unique, and every field has some special qualities that no other field has. Catuit is tucked away in the woods in the middle of, it's in the middle of Catuit, but you would never know that when you're in downtown Catuit. It's just tucked in the woods, and it's such an incredible setting. And they just had a massive capital campaign to improve bleachers, handicap access, bathrooms, and this field is like a Hollywood set. Hyannis Field, it's great. It's within walking distance of downtown Hyannis. You can go out to dinner and walk 4 blocks and be at the ballpark. We used to have a water view from the top of the bleachers, but now because the trees have grown and we're not allowed to cut them down, we don't have the water view. But we still have the excitement of being near the harbor and great place for fireworks. And there's also a lot of extra fields, additional fields nearby, so that the kids can play, and there's a batting cage. And you come to the Hyannis Field and you can basically like leave your kids, go sit in the stands if you want to watch the game, and know that they're safe. They're all running around, but they check in, and the concession stand and the merchandise booth are set up so perfectly that it's just a great layout. Pillar of the Cape League. Wasn't the founder of the Cape League, but he might as well be. He knows everything about the Cape League. He's been a wonderful mentor for me. He is such a gentle man. And of course, he's Mr. Cotuit. He's Mr. Cotuit Kettleers. But he never let that get in the way, because he served as a league treasurer for many, many years. He could always see the big picture. He was a person who knew his franchise role, knew his Cape League role, and they never clashed. Just a wonderful, wonderful, gentle man. Jack Elmer, yep. He brought on Bourne with the help of Bob Karate and Dennis Butts and Don Tully. And then Jack also was the driving force behind the Hyannis Mets at the time, with old-time names that you will remember: Charlie Leonard, Frank Green, one of the Penns, I think it was Milton, and a few other people. Well, I think one of the biggest things that's been obvious to fans is that we have had major field improvements thanks to the Yawkey Foundation grant that went over a 5-year period, and that was $150,000 per team. And then we in the Cape League instituted it being a matching grant. So teams had to go out and raise the $150,000. So then it amounted to $300,000 of field improvements going into each field. And sometimes that was $300,000 to $500,000. And that's where it was great competition among the teams to see, well, I see you have better bathrooms, well, maybe I'm going to upgrade mine, or I'm going to do a knee wall, or, it was great competition. So that's one thing I think fans would be aware of. There have been some smaller things, like we used to have our players travel by their own cars to the games, which over 35 years of me watching games, why we never had a catastrophe. We're just very lucky. Anyway, 11 years ago, we brought on a fleet of buses. We hired First Student. They've been a wonderful partner to work with, so our players travel by bus, which is and we call it the Safe Transportation Project. Over the last 10, 15 years, the Cape League in the off-season has gotten has gotten very involved in winter activities, whether it's ringing the bell for the Salvation Army or the March of Dimes telethon, which doesn't exist right now. We've been very active with community action for the turkey baskets for Thanksgiving, Cape Cod residents, and that's new too. There are a lot of little things. Our playoffs have expanded. We have a workout at Fenway Park, which is going into its 5th year. We've played our All-Star game 3 years in a row at Fenway. So I think we like to mix it up. We went to Fenway Park for 3 years, and the first year our attendance was 14,000. We were pretty happy with that. The next year it was 10, and the next year it was 7. So we knew that the novelty of it was wearing off. It's still, my goodness, who would want to play at Fenway Park? So you have to think of the fans, you have to think of the players. The players get a thrill of a lifetime because many of them will never be there again on the field. But for some fans, it really made it too hard for them to get there. So we decided also we didn't want it to become old hat, where it just wasn't exciting anymore. So after 3 years of playing at Fenway, We came back to the Cape. We're entering our 5th year. Wareham will be hosting the All-Star Game this year. My personal opinion is I'd like to continue to mix that up, maybe be on the Cape for 4 or 5 years, go back up to Fenway, come back to the Cape, and that way everybody would be happy, I think. Okay, players now are coming to the Cape League who want to really move into a career in professional baseball. The player of maybe the 70s, and I'm not saying this about all the players in the 70s, some of them in the 70s might have come because they thought it was a great place to be in the summer, sun, beach, young ladies, opportunity to play baseball every night, have a job of 20 hours a week, make a little bit of money to pay your host family. But now that has really shifted into the players I am seeing are very serious about getting into professional baseball. They're not here to just goof around. We have a 44-game schedule, so we play, so there are 220 games throughout the summer season until we hit the playoffs, and then we can have anywhere from, depends on sweeps or not, we can have from 15 to 20. Well, we expanded our playoff format with the real emphasis of bringing more baseball to the fans in August. My issue, personal issue, has been, would you rather play in June with iffy weather and fewer fans, or would you rather play in August with beautiful weather and a lot of fans? It's complex because the College World Series is at the end of June and many of our players are tied up in regionals, super regionals, and the College World Series. But we do go deeper into August and we have more games, and our fan base has been loving it. Well, I think the thing with social media, coming from someone who doesn't do all of the social media that's out there, but I understand how important it is, I think what it's done for us is it's helped us to reach out to the younger fans, and younger, maybe, anyone under 50. We were fortunate enough to meet Ashley Crosby, who's a product of Barnstable High School, very successful young lady who's been in college and graduate school and is now working on an internship. And she was our director of social media for 4 years, and she really brought us to the level that I think was a very constant level in terms of other summer leagues and what they were doing. And so we do Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And recently, Ashley has had to step back from her job, her unpaid volunteer free job, and concentrate more on her studies. So Liz Cohen, who is also a product of Barnstable High School, Liz is now, as of 3 weeks ago, our director of social media. And she is a super, super young lady. Internet. We have done, we started out with just audio streaming 9 years ago, and then within 2 years we went to the audio and video streaming. So it's a complete package, and I have watched this whole internet broadcast project develop into something as desirable as playing on Cape Cod, coming to the Cape League as a player. So we now have young men and women, mostly young men, applying from Syracuse School of Broadcasting, Hartford, some of the top broadcasting schools in the country, wanting their students to come here to get that experience of an internet broadcast. Even though there might be 20 or 50 people listening to it around the country, the players take it as seriously as that microphone were, ABC or NBC. For about 5 years in a row, we held one class at DY High School, and we brought all the players together early in the season, and Bob Bigelow, who had been with the Celtics, he was one of our speakers for 2 or 3 years, he came in and he talked about alcohol and smokeless tobacco, and that was the basic thrust. It was too early for the opiate problem and having that discussion, because that wasn't an issue back then. Now what we do have, and hats off to Falmouth and Gosnold for creating this. 2 years ago, they started a program with the Falmouth Commodores called Playing Above the Influence. And it became like a family fun day where there were players interacting with the kids, little kids before games. The fire department was there, the sheriff was there, the police department was there. They had all kinds of games and activities for the kids. And one of the really cool things is they have these goggles that you put on, and then you go out to the pitcher's mound and you try to throw a ball. And the goggles are mimicking what it's like when you're either intoxicated or on drugs, or certainly out of your element. So that's a cool thing, but it's given the players a chance to interact with the kids, and the kids to look up to the players, saying, oh, okay, so doing drugs isn't a good thing, because if I did drugs, I couldn't be a star athlete, and maybe I can resist my friends coming up to me and saying, you want to smoke some pot. So what's happened with that is that Falmouth did that for 2 years, great success. Gosnold called me and asked if other teams in the Cape League would like to do it. So I think we're going to launch it in 3 fields this summer. And I think that is a great way to get the message to our younger people and to give our players sort of some reinforcement about how important it is to be, sober and not intoxicated and have your faculties. Boy, is that a really coveted position. And you're talking about play-by-play. So, play-by-play announcers are not brought in as interns from schools of broadcasting. It's a very sought-after job, and many of our announcers have had that position for years and years. I look at Tim Elstrom, who has announced for Hyannis probably 30 years, and others in other locations have 1 or 2 announcers that have been doing it for years. So I would say the answer to your question is, how does an announcer get into the Cape League? Pick the team, the town that person's interested in, and maybe if he has 2 or she has 2 or 3 choices, contact the team president. Contact me if they don't know where else to go, and then I'll put them in the right direction. But yeah, it's a great job. It's a great job. Oh, it's free, of course. Well, I'm so glad you asked, because we are in the middle of our campaign where we're seeking nominations. Mercy Otis Warren, just in case you need a visual, Mercy Otis Warren was an incredible woman born in the 1700s in West Barnstable. She had to do a lot of her activities behind the scenes. She wrote under an assumed name. She was a political activist. She was a patriot like you can't imagine. And actually, you can imagine. You can see her statue on the front lawn of the Barnstable County Courthouse. So 14 years ago, Alice George and Lou Cataldo and a few other people got together, and they formed a committee to honor a woman in the community of Cape Cod, all of Cape Cod. So it's the Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year. And after 12 years, Alice stepped down, and she asked me if I would come on the committee, and we have a wonderful committee of 9 women and 1 gentleman. And we are seeking nominations for someone who has, well, I'll just tell you exactly what the brochure says. The award is presented to a woman who's a resident of Cape Cod, who has demonstrated leadership in the Cape Cod community and has made significant contributions anywhere from the arts, education, business, community involvement, and volunteerism is very important. You can follow us on the website. You can pick up a brochure at Barnstable Town Hall or any of our libraries. or you can contact me. I'll put you in the right direction. I was 3 years ago, and it's a very humbling experience because I followed people like Lynn Poyant and Sue French and Gloria Rudman and Felicia Penn, and the list is very impressive, and that was like, I couldn't even believe that my name would be on there, but it was a very special night. The award will be presented on June 8th, and we do it in conjunction with Tales of Cape Cod. And the interesting part of Tales of Cape Cod is their charge is to maintain history in the town of Barnstable in particular. Some history around Cape Cod, but a lot of it is the town of Barnstable. So in preserving that history, they bring in speakers. And last year we had a speaker on Mercy Otis Warren, and this year we're having a speaker talk about Susan B. Anthony and her struggles and her success. And so it follows right in with Mercy Otis Warren. And so we'll present the award that night. Matt Pitta is our MC. It's a great night. It's a very moving night. So the nominations need to be in our hands by April 20th, which is Patriots Day. And then we'll make the announcement in the press at the end of May, and then the award will be in June. Judy, Walden, Scarafile, and I live in Barnstable Village.